Myra leaned into my sweater while I was reaching for her lunchbox, and her voice came out steady, like she was reciting something she'd practiced. "Mommy, Daddy has a secret lover, and when you travel, they're going to take all your money." I stopped moving. The lunchbox stayed on the counter. My hand stayed in the air. She blinked up at me and tilted her head. "Is money heavy? Like the change jar?" I crouched down so we were eye to eye. My throat felt tight, but I kept my face calm. "Where did you hear that, baby?" "Daddy was talking on the phone in the garage. He said your plane day at 9. She traced a cycle on my arm with her finger. "9 is when my cartoons start." 9 wasn't a guess. Rowan had read my itinerary out loud 2 nights ago while scrolling his phone, pretending to help me pack. He'd tapped the screen like he was coaching a play. Friday morning. Holiday week. Year-end staffing. The kind of window where things move quietly and get explained later. I kissed Myra's forehead and promised her pancakes on Saturday. No yelling. No scary voices. Just pancakes and a movie. She nodded and grabbed her lunchbox, and I watched her braid swing as she walked to the car. The house went quiet in a new way after I dropped her at school. I stood in the kitchen and stared at the thermos I'd forgotten on the counter again. My hands were shaking, but my mind wasn't. It was running a list. The bank alerts stopped coming 2 months ago. I thought it was a tech glitch. Then I found the teller slip folded inside a grocery receipt on our counter. Someone had scribbled signature card near transaction amount just under the threshold that triggers a call. I'd smoothed it flat and put it in a drawer, telling myself it was paperwork Rowan handled because he's better with finances. He isn't. He's just better at looking helpful. The Saturday ATM withdrawals lined up like breadcrumbs. Same route. Same time. A boutique hotel a block off Lenox with beige lobby sofas and citrus water no one drinks. I told myself it was sales work. Salespeople entertain clients. They also learn how to open side doors while smiling. And the email account. Rowan set up a points folder years ago for airline miles. Last month I noticed bank notices sliding into it instead of our shared inbox. Small things. Balance confirmations. Nothing that screamed emergency. Just enough to keep me from seeing the map. I didn't cancel the trip out loud. I sent one email to my boss about Q4 fires at the nonprofit and shrugged when Rowan asked if I was still going. "Probably," I said. "We'll see." He looked relieved. Relieved people look away. I needed that. I called Naledi after Myra went to bed. She's a senior paralegal at a family law firm in Decatur, and she doesn't do drama. She does steps. "Download every statement you can access," she said. "Pull your credit report. Open a personal account tomorrow and route your paycheck there so the mortgage doesn't become a hostage. And go to the bank in person. Ask them to add a verification note. Any structural change requires both account holders present with updated ID. Will that stop him? It'll slow him down. Policy becomes the bad guy. Your job is to be early where timing matters." I stayed up past midnight building a folder. Statements with dates circled. Withdrawals matched to hotel ATMs. A list of bills I could keep alive through my new account. A copy of my ID. A written request for the verification note. No adjectives. Just facts on paper. Rowan whistled in the shower the next morning. He only whistles when he's decided something that benefits him more than anyone else. Have you ever trusted someone with your name on a line? Comment yes if you've ever had to choose between believing and verifying. I printed 3 months of statements at the library because our home printer logs everything to a cloud Rowan set up. I circled every Saturday withdrawal in red pen. 12 weeks. 11 Saturdays with activity. 1 pattern. 1 hotel. 1 story he thought I'd never read. The ATM near Lenox wasn't random. It sat across from a boutique hotel with valet parking and a lobby that smelled like expensive candles. I drove past it once on my way to a work meeting. The kind of place where people go to feel like they're getting away with something small and glamorous. Not hiding. Validating. I opened a spreadsheet and matched dates to his calendar. Every Saturday he said he had a client breakfast or site visit. The ATM logged a withdrawal between 9:15 and 9:45 a.m. tight window. Same rhythm. The kind of routine that replaces thinking. Then I found the rerouted alerts. Rowan's Points email account was supposed to be for travel rewards. I checked it one afternoon while he was in a meeting, and there they were. Bank balance confirmations, low balance warnings, even a notice about a signature card update I never signed. All of it filtered away from me. All of it arriving where I wouldn't look unless I had a reason. I screen shared the folder to myself and saved it 3 places: my personal email, a thumb drive I hid inside a tampon box, and a cloud account he didn't know existed. I wrote one line in a journal I kept under the bathroom sink. Patterns don't lie. People do. The brass key showed up 2 weeks ago. Small, with a green tag, sitting on Rowan's dresser like it had always been there. I asked what it was for, and he said, paperwork. He smiled when he said it, the kind of smile that ends a conversation without sounding rude. Paperwork people care about gets scanned. Paperwork that hides gets locked in a box. I asked the bank the next day if we had a safety deposit box. The teller checked and said yes. Opened 6 months ago. Access requires both key holders present unless there's written authorization on file. I thanked her and asked if they could add a standing note, both present for access, pending documentation updates. She said she'd flag it. Policy isn't a wall, but it's a speed bump that matters when someone's in a hurry. The mortgage was due in 8 days. My paycheck usually hit our joint account on the 15th, and Rowan moved it to cover utilities and the car note. If he emptied the account while I was supposed to be traveling, the auto-pay would bounce. The non-profit would call. The lights wouldn't go out, but the questions would start, and by then he'd have a story ready. I acted fast to protect us from fraud. She travels too much to notice. I'm the responsible one. The first draft of any disaster belongs to whoever tells it first. I opened a personal checking account at a credit union in Midtown. No fanfare. Just a place to route my paycheck so the house stayed standing. I moved enough to cover the mortgage, utilities, and Myra's school expenses. Everything else could wait for a judge to sort out later. Naledi called that night and asked if I'd been to the Buckhead branch yet. I told her I was going in the morning. She said, "Good. Bring your folder. Speak less than you think you need to. Let the paper do the work." What if he's already made changes? Then you'll know, and you'll have a timestamp. Either way, you're not walking in blind. I didn't sleep. Not because I was scared. Because I was calibrating. A wrong word looks like emotion. A right silence looks like strength. I wrote one sentence on a sticky note and slid it into the folder. If it's authorized, let him prove it. Then let policy be the bad guy. I repeated it out loud twice after we hung up. If it's authorized, let him prove it. Simple. Clean. No emotion to pick apart later. The next morning I opened an individual account at a credit union in Midtown. The woman behind the desk had kind eyes and didn't ask why I was routing my paycheck away from a joint account. She just printed the forms and said, "Smart to have options." I thanked her and left before I could cry in a lobby that smelled like printer toner and coffee someone burned 2 hours ago. Rowan came home that night carrying takeout and a smile that didn't reach his eyes. He set the bags on the counter and asked how my day was. I said fine. He said he had an idea. Year-end's coming up. I should swing by the bank Friday and clean up some auto-pays before the holiday rush. Make sure everything's streamlined. He said it like he was offering to take out the trash. Helpful. Casual. A man solving a problem no one asked him to solve. I looked up from the napkins I was folding. We could do it together after the weekend. I'm swamped right now. He shook his head, still smiling. I've got it. You've got enough on your plate with the non-profit. Let me handle the admin stuff. I let him stack his story higher. Tall stories topple on their own. Okay, I said. If you're sure. He kissed my forehead and went to change. I heard him whistling in the bedroom. The same 3 notes, over and over. Rowan only whistles when he's decided something that benefits him more than anyone else. I texted Naledi. He just told me he's going to the bank Friday to clean up auto-pays. Her response came back in seconds. Let him. You've already built the wall. Now let him walk into it. That night I rehearsed the line in the bathroom mirror. If he's authorized, let him prove it. I said it 5 times, each one quieter than the last, until it sounded like fact instead of accusation. Have you ever had to protect yourself from someone you promised to trust? Comment guilty or not guilty, your verdict on what I did next. I dropped Myra at school early and told her I'd pick her up for frozen yogurt after. She asked if Daddy was coming. I said maybe. She looked at me the way kids do when they are measuring the space between what you say and what you mean. The Buckhead branch opened at 8. I got there at 7:52 and waited in my car, watching the door. The building had that polished hum of a place where people move money they don't want to think about too hard. Glass doors, marble floors, a security guard who nodded at everyone like he was checking names off a guest list. T. Whitaker's office smelled like mint and paper. He gestured to a chair and asked how he could help. I handed him my ID and the folder I'd built the night before. Statements, circled dates, a written request for the verification note. I need to add a requirement, I said. Any structural change to this account needs both account holders present with updated ID. In person. He read the request twice, then looked at me over his glasses. May I ask why? Holiday fraud prevention, I said. Simple. True enough. He nodded slowly, like he'd heard versions of this before. I'll add the note. It won't freeze the account, but it will flag any attempts to close, consolidate, or transfer without both parties physically present. How long does that take? It's active immediately. He typed something into his computer, then turned the screen toward me. See? Updated signature card requirement. Both account holders, valid ID, in-person verification. I thanked him and stood. He walked me to the door and said, Mrs. Quinn, policies like this exist for a reason. You're using them correctly. I didn't tell him I'd rehearsed that conversation 12 times in my head. That night Rowan floated the bank visit again over dinner. He said he wanted to tidy things up before the quarter closed. I asked if it could wait. He said no, that year-end bottlenecks make everything harder. He touched my hand across the table like he was comforting me. You've got the trip Friday, right? I'll handle it while you're packing. I nodded and kept my face soft. That's helpful. Thank you. He smiled. The kind of smile that says I'm protecting you from complexity you wouldn't understand. After he went upstairs, I pulled out my phone and texted Naledi, his going Friday morning. I'm ready. She replied, don't be there. Let the policy stop him. If you're there, it becomes a scene. If you're not, it becomes a procedure. I stayed at that message for 5 minutes. She was right. I didn't need to confront him. I needed to let the system do what systems do when someone tries to move faster than the rules allow. I turned off the kitchen light and stood in the dark for a moment, listening to the house hum. The dishwasher clicking through its cycle. The furnace kicking on. Myra's white noise machine upstairs playing ocean sounds that didn't sound like any ocean I'd ever heard. Preparedness isn't the same as paranoia. It's just knowing which doors lock from the inside. Would you have shown up at that bank? Or would you have let policy do the work? Comment yes if you'd let him walk into the wall alone. Saturday morning I told Rowan I needed to run errands. He barely looked up from his laptop. I drove to the boutique hotel near Lenox and parked across the street where I could see the lobby doors. At 9:23 a.m., Rowan's car pulled into the valet lane. He got out, adjusted his jacket, and waited. 30 seconds later, a woman in a charcoal blazer and white blouse stepped out of a rideshare. She carried a slim leather folder and walked like someone who'd mapped the route in advance. Celine Hart. I didn't know her name yet, but I knew her shape. Composed. Efficient. The kind of person who dresses like a verified email. They didn't hug. They didn't kiss. They just nodded and walked inside together like colleagues meeting for working breakfast. I waited 5 minutes, then followed. The lobby smelled like vanilla and citrus. I sat in a chair near the coffee station with a clear view of the seating area. Rowan and Celine sat on a beige sofa near the window. She opened the folder and spread papers across the low table between them. He leaned forward, pointing at something. She nodded and made a note with a pen that looked expensive. I couldn't hear the words, but I could read the choreography. This wasn't romance. This was rehearsal. After 20 minutes they stood. She handed him the folder. He tucked it under his arm and shook her hand like they'd just closed a deal. She left first. He stayed behind, scrolling his phone, then walked to the front desk and spoke to the clock for less than a minute. I left before he saw me and sat in my car with my hands on the wheel. My heart was pounding, but my mind was clear. This wasn't about desire. This was about narrative control. She was a prop. The folder was a script. And I was the audience they thought had already left the theater. I called Naledi from the parking lot. He met someone, I said. A woman. Professional. She had a folder labeled something I couldn't read. They acted like coworkers. Did they see you? No. Good. Don't confront him. Not yet. Schedule a consult with a family attorney. You need to know what dissipation looks like and how documentation protects you if this goes to court. I wrote the word on my palm with a pen I found in the cup holder. Dissipation. What does that mean? Wasting marital assets for non-marital purposes. Hotels. Cash withdrawals with no business receipts. Transfers before filing. Judges hate it, but you need a paper trail to prove it. I already had the paper trail. I just didn't know it had a name. Monday morning I made an appointment with an attorney in Midtown. The office was in a building with frosted glass doors and a thermostat set 2 degrees too cold. The kind of place where people finish their questions faster than they want to. The attorney's name was Calloway. She had grey hair cut sharp and a handshake that felt like a signature. I handed her my folder. She read through it without speaking, flipping pages like she was taking inventory. This is good work, she said finally. You've documented the pattern, the rerouted alerts, the withdrawals, the verification note at the bank. You're 3 steps ahead of most people who walk through that door. What happens if he tries to move the money? If you file, you can request an automatic temporary restraining order. It freezes major financial moves until the court decides. But timing matters. If he moves assets before you file, you'll need to prove dissipation and ask the court to credit you for the loss. She leaned back and folded her hands. Here's what you need to remember. Credibility is currency. The spouse who looks calm, organized, and reasonable wins. The spouse who looks reactive loses. You're already halfway there. I left with a checklist and a theme I repeated to myself all the way home. Credibility is currency. Don't argue with performances. Let evidence do the talking. Have you ever had to choose between confronting someone and just collecting proof? Subscribe to see how quiet preparation becomes the loudest protection. Calloway's office felt colder the second time. Or maybe I just noticed it more. She sat across from me with a yellow legal pad and a pen that clicked every time she wrote something down. Let's talk about dissipation, she said. It's when one spouse wastes marital assets for non-marital purposes. Hotels, cash, gifts, transfers to third parties. If you can prove it, the court can credit you dollar for dollar in the settlement. I thought about the ATM withdrawals, the boutique hotel, the Saturday pattern that repeated like a metronome. How much proof do I need? Enough to establish intent and repetition. You've got dates, amounts, and a location pattern. That's strong, but you'll also need context. If he claims it was business-related, you'll need to show there's no corresponding business activity, no receipts, no client meetings logged, just cash and timing that doesn't match his calendar. She clicked her pen twice and wrote something I couldn't see. If you file, you can request an ATIO, automatic temporary restraining order. It prevents either of you from making major financial changes without court approval or mutual consent. It kicks in the moment you file. What counts as major? Closing accounts, transferring assets, taking out loans, anything that shifts the financial landscape. It doesn't freeze day-to-day spending, but it stops the big moves. I asked about bonuses. Rowan's year-end bonus was due in 2 weeks. She made a note. Bonuses earned during the marriage are marital property, even if they are paid after separation. If he tries to delay it or redirect it, document that. It becomes another data point. She flipped a page and looked at me directly. Here's the part people don't talk about enough. Household stability. You're keeping the mortgage paid. You're keeping the lights on. You're making sure your daughter's routine doesn't collapse while you're figuring out your next move. That's not spite. That's stewardship. A judge will see that. I felt something loosen in my chest. Stewardship. Not control. Not revenge. Just making sure the foundation didn't crack while the walls were shaking. What if he accuses me of hiding money? You're not hiding it. You're routing your paycheck to cover household essentials because you have reason to believe joint funds may be compromised. That's protective, not punitive. Bring your statements. Show the math. Judges respect clarity. She handed me a checklist on firm letterhead. It had 7 items, each one a step I'd either already taken or could take in the next 48 hours. One more thing, she said as I stood to leave. Don't let him bait you into an emotional reaction. He'll try. They always do. Stay boring. Stay factual. Boring wins in family court. I folded the checklist and slid it into my folder. Boring. I could do boring. That night I sat in the dining room after Myra went to bed and updated my spreadsheet. Every withdrawal. Every date. Every location. I added a column for business justification and left it blank. Let him fill it in later if he could. Rowan came downstairs and asked what I was working on. I said year-end budget stuff for the nonprofit. He nodded and poured himself a glass of water. He didn't ask to see the screen. I saved the file under a name he'd never open, Myra College Fund 2034. Credibility isn't built in courtrooms. It's built in kitchens at midnight when no one's watching and you choose documentation over drama. Would you stay boring, or would you confront? Comment your move if you were holding this folder. I woke up before the alarm and lay still in the dark, listening to Rowan breathe beside me. He'd set his phone for 7:10. I watched the screen glow when it went off, watched him reach for it without opening his eyes, watched him silence it with the practiced motion of someone who'd done this exact thing 100 times before. He showered, shaved, pressed a tie knot flat with his thumb, kissed Myra's hair at breakfast and told her to listen to her mother. He didn't look at me long enough to notice I wasn't packing. My suitcase still sat by the bedroom chair where I'd left it 3 days ago. Empty. A prop in a play he thought he was directing. I dropped Myra at school at 8:17. She hugged me tighter than usual and asked if I was really going on the plane. I kissed her forehead and said plans change sometimes, but pancakes don't. She smiled and ran toward her classroom, backpack bouncing. I drove to Buckhead and parked 2 blocks from the bank. The morning air smelled like cold asphalt and someone's expensive coffee. I walked into the lobby at 8:42 and took a seat near the mirrored column where I could see both the entrance and the teller line. The building smelled like lemon cleaner and leather briefcases. A security guard nodded at me. I nodded back. At 8:51, Rowan's car pulled up outside. He got out, straightened his jacket, and checked his phone. 30 seconds later, a silver sedan stopped at the curb. Celine Hart stepped out wearing a charcoal blazer, slim black pants, and heels that clicked against the sidewalk like punctuation marks. She carried the same leather folder I'd seen at the hotel. They didn't greet each other with warmth. Just a quick nod, like teammates confirming a play before the snap. They walked in together. Rowan scanned the lobby. Left, right, telestations. But he didn't look toward the seating area where I sat half hidden behind a potted ficus. Celine led. He followed. She moved like someone who'd walked this route in her head a dozen times. They approached the first available teller, a young woman with braids and a name tag that said Kendra. Rowan leaned on the counter with his forearms and smiled the smile that usually makes people feel like they're being let in on something important. Good morning. I need to consolidate a joint account and update some autopay settings before year-end. My wife's traveling today, but I've got authorization. He gestured toward Celine, who opened the folder and slid a single sheet of paper across the counter. Kendra glanced at the letter. It was printed on plain white paper with a header that said account authorization in a font that looked official if you didn't look too close. No notary seal. No date stamp. Just words arranged to create momentum. Kendra's eyes flicked to Celine, then back to Rowan. Let me get a manager for this. Rowan's smile tightened, but he kept his voice warm. No problem. We've got time. Celine stood beside him with her hands folded, face calm, like someone waiting for a delayed flight. I watched her scan the room once, quick, professional, and then settle back into stillness. T. Whitaker emerged from the back hallway in a navy suit and that same winter scarf folded like origami. He greeted them both with a polite nod and gestured toward his office, but Rowan shook his head. We can handle it here. Just a quick consolidation. Year-end cleanup. Whitaker's expression didn't change. I understand. Let me pull up the account. He stepped behind the telestation and typed something into the system. The screen reflected in his glasses. He read for 5 seconds, then looked up. Mr. Quinn, this account has a verification note requiring both account holders to be present with updated identification for any structural changes. Rowan blinked. I have authorization. He tapped the letter Celine had placed on the counter. Whitaker picked it up, read it in 3 seconds, and set it down gently. This isn't a notarized power of attorney. For structural changes, closures, consolidations, ownership transfers, we need both account holders physically present with valid ID. Celine spoke for the first time, her voice smooth and measured. We understood this was standard year-end maintenance. Is there a form we can complete to expedite? Whitaker shook his head. It's not about forms. It's about compliance. The note was added at Mrs. Quinn's request earlier this week. Rowan's jaw tightened. His charm slipped half an inch. She's on a flight right now. That's why I'm here. I stood. My legs felt steadier than I expected. I walked across the lobby, footsteps quiet on marble, and stopped 3 feet from the counter. Rowan saw me and froze. His face went through 3 expressions in 2 seconds. Confusion, recognition, and something close to panic. I looked at Whitaker, not Rowan. My voice came out calm and clear. If he's authorized, let him prove it. Check the updated signature card. The lobby went quiet in a way that had weight. Kendra's fingers hovered over her keyboard. Celine's composure cracked at the edges. Just a flicker, a slight tightening around her mouth. Rowan opened his mouth, closed it, then tried again. Ilara, what are you? I held up one hand. Not aggressive, just a boundary. I'm here, I said, so we can handle this together, if that's what you wanted. Whitaker's face stayed neutral, but I saw the smallest shift in his posture. He turned to Rowan. Would you like to proceed with both account holders present? Rowan looked at Celine. Celine looked at the letter on the counter like it had betrayed her. Neither of them said anything. Whitaker waited 5 seconds, then closed the folder on his screen. If you'd like to schedule an appointment when both parties are available, we're happy to assist. Rowan's voice came out tight. This is ridiculous. I'm trying to protect our accounts. I didn't argue. I didn't raise my voice. I just looked at him and said, then we'll do it together, when we're both ready. He stared at me for a long moment, and I saw him recalculate. The room, the witnesses, the policy he couldn't charm his way past. He grabbed the letter off the counter, nodded once at Whitaker, and walked toward the exit without looking back. Celine followed, heels clicking faster now, folder tucked under her arm like evidence she needed to hide. I stayed at the counter. Whitaker met my eyes. Thank you for coming in, Mrs. Quinn. Thank you for following procedure. I walked out into the November cold and sat in my car. My hands were shaking now, but not from fear, from relief, from the strange, electric clarity of knowing I'd been exactly where I needed to be at exactly the right time. My phone buzzed. A text from Rowan, We need to talk. I didn't reply. I started the car and drove to pick up Myra early for frozen yogurt, just like I promised. Have you ever had to show up somewhere you weren't supposed to be, just to protect what was yours? Comment yes if you'd have walked into that lobby. The frozen yogurt place smelled like waffle cones and artificial strawberry. Myra chose vanilla with gummy bears and sprinkles, and we sat by the window where the afternoon light made everything look softer than it was. Did you go on the plane? She asked, swinging her legs under the table. No, baby. Plans changed. I stayed here. She nodded like that made sense. Is Daddy mad? I looked at her, this small person who heard things she shouldn't have to hear and asked questions I wished she didn't need to ask. I smoothed her hair back and kept my voice steady. Daddy and I have some things to figure out. But none of it changes how much we both love you. You're safe. I promise. She ate a spoonful of yogurt and looked out the window. Okay. Can we still have pancakes tomorrow? Absolutely. When we got home, Rowan's car was in the driveway. I felt my stomach tighten, but I kept my face calm. Myra ran inside calling for him. I followed, slower, carrying her backpack and the folder I'd taken to the bank. He was in the kitchen, leaning against the counter with his arms crossed. His tie was loosened. His jaw was set. He looked at me like I'd committed a crime he was still trying to name. What was that? He said. Myra stopped in the doorway. I turned to her and smiled. Hey, sweetheart, can you go start your homework? I'll come check on you in a few minutes. She looked between us, then nodded and went upstairs. I waited until I heard her bedroom door close. I set my bag on the counter and met his eyes. What was what? You told me you were traveling. You said the trip was still on. I said probably. Then I changed my mind. Work stuff came up. His voice got louder. You ambushed me at the bank. I showed up at my bank to handle my account. You were already there. He pushed off the counter and took 2 steps toward me. Not threatening, but close enough that I could smell his cologne and see the vein pulsing in his temple. You added that verification note without telling me. You made me look like a fool in front of. He stopped himself. The sentence hung in the air, unfinished. In front of who? I asked quietly. He didn't answer. He turned and ran his hand through his hair, pacing 3 steps left, then 3 steps right. I stayed where I was, hands loose at my sides, voice calm. Rowan, if you needed to make changes to the account, we could have done it together. That's how joint accounts work. I was trying to protect us. Year-end fraud is real. I didn't want our assets vulnerable while you were out of town. Then why didn't you tell me you were going? Why bring someone else? She's a colleague. She helps with admin overflow. I nodded slowly. A colleague who brings authorization letters to bank consolidations. His face flushed. You're twisting this. I'm asking questions. He stared at me, breathing hard, and I saw the exact moment he realized he couldn't win this conversation. Not here. Not now. Not with Myra upstairs and my voice staying level while his kept rising. He grabbed his keys off the counter. I need some A. Okay. He walked to the door, stopped, turned back. This isn't over, Elara. I know. He left. The door closed hard, but not quite a slam. I stood in the kitchen and counted to 10, then went upstairs to check on Myra. She was lying on her bed with a coloring book, filling in a rainbow with careful strokes. She looked up when I sat beside her. Is Daddy okay? He's frustrated, but he'll be fine. We both will. She went back to coloring. I watched her small hands move the crayon in steady lines, and I thought about how children measure safety in sounds. Calm voices, doors that close softly, promises that don't break. I wasn't going to let her world collapse because 2 adults couldn't figure out how to end something honestly. That night, after Myra was asleep, I sat at the dining room table and opened my laptop. I logged into the joint account and took screenshots of every transaction from the past 6 months. I saved them in 3 places: Then I opened the document Calloway had given me and checked off another item on the list. Document dissipation, add verification note, separate essential funds, establish timeline. My phone buzzed. A text from the lady. How did it go? I typed back. He tried. Policy stopped him. I was there. He knows. Her reply came fast. Good. Now he has to decide if he wants to keep pretending or start negotiating. Either way, you control the timeline now. I set the phone down and stayed at the ceiling. Control felt like the wrong word. I didn't control anything. I just refused to let someone else control me. There's a difference between fighting for something and refusing to let it be taken quietly. Comment if you know which one wins. Saturday morning I made pancakes. Myra sat at the kitchen table with syrup on her chin, kicking her feet and humming a song from school. Rowan didn't come downstairs. I heard the shower running at 8. At 9 he came down in jeans and a sweater, poured coffee, and sat across from Myra without looking at me. He asked her about her week. She told him about a science project involving volcanoes and baking soda. He smiled and nodded and played the part of an engaged father while the air between us stayed sharp and cold. After breakfast, he took Myra to the park. I stayed home and called Naledi. He tried to move the money yesterday, I said. Brought someone with him. A woman. Professional looking. She had an authorization letter that wasn't notarized. Did the bank let him? No. Whitaker held the line. I was there. Rowan didn't know I'd be there. She was quiet for 3 seconds. Good. That failed attempt is now on record. The bank logged it. If this goes to court, that's evidence of intent. He's angry. Let him be angry. Angry people make mistakes. You stay boring. I heard Myra's laugh float in through the front door as she and Rowan came back inside. I told Naledi I'd call her later and hung up. Rowan put Myra down for quiet time and found me in the dining room, laptop open, working on a budget spreadsheet for the nonprofit. He stood in the doorway for a moment before he spoke. Can we talk? I saved my work and closed the laptop. Sure. He sat down across from me, hands folded on the table like he was about to negotiate a contract. His voice was measured now, controlled. The anger from yesterday had been repackaged into something that looked like reason. I think we need to be honest with each other. I waited. Things haven't been good between us for a while, he said. I know that. You know that. Maybe we've been avoiding it because of Myra, but we can't keep pretending. I nodded. I agree. He looked relieved, like I'd just validated a script he'd been practicing. I think we should talk about separation. Structured, amicable. We figure out custody, finances, all of it, without lawyers getting involved and making it ugly. Why without lawyers? His jaw tightened. Because lawyers turn everything into a war. We're adults. We can handle this ourselves. I folded my hands and kept my voice calm. Rowan, if we're separating, we both need representation. Not to fight, to make sure everything's fair and legal. You don't trust me. I trust that we both need protection. That's not the same as distrust. He leaned back and exhaled through his nose. You've already talked to someone, haven't you? I didn't lie. I consulted an attorney. Yes. When? This week. His face darkened. So while I was trying to protect our accounts, you were building a case against me. I was protecting myself. And Myra. That's all. He stood up fast enough that the chair scraped against the floor. You added that note at the bank to trap me. You knew I'd try to consolidate, and you set me up to look like. He stopped again. That same unfinished sentence. The one that told me more than anything he could have said out loud. I stayed seated. If you were just consolidating for fraud protection, why bring someone else? Why not call me first? I told you. She's a colleague. What's her name? He hesitated. Just half a second. But it was enough. Celine Hart. She helps with project overflow. Does she help with banking, too? his hands clenched into fists at his sides. "You're twisting everything." "I'm asking questions, Rowan. If you don't like the answers, that's not my fault." He stared at me for a long moment, and I saw something shift in his eyes. The realization that charm wasn't going to work. That the narrative he'd been building, responsible husband, protective provider, had just hit a wall made of policy and paperwork and a wife who showed up early. "This isn't over," he said quietly. "I know." He walked out. I heard the garage door open, his car start, the sound fade down the street. I sat in the silence and opened my laptop again. I logged into the bank account one more time and checked the activity. There it was, time-stamped from yesterday at 9:04 a.m. Consolidation request flagged, verification required. Both account holders must be present with valid ID. The system had remembered. The institution had held. I took a screenshot and saved it in the folder labeled Myra College Fund 2034. That night, after I put Myra to bed, I got a notification from the credit monitoring service I'd set up. A soft inquiry had been placed on my credit report from a lender I'd never heard of. Not a hard pull, nothing that would affect my score, but a test. Someone checking doors to see which ones were unlocked. I forwarded the alert to Naledi with one line, "He's still looking for a way in." Her response came back immediately, "Let him look. Every attempt he makes is another exhibit. Keep logging. Stay boring. You're winning." I turned off the lights and stood at the kitchen window, looking out at the cul-de-sac. Porch lights glowing. Houses quiet. The kind of street where everyone waves and no one says anything real unless they are 3 cups of coffee deep. I didn't feel like I was winning. I felt like I was holding a line I didn't know I'd have to defend. But I was holding it. And every time he pushed, the record got longer. Institutions remember. Policies don't forgive. And a woman who shows up idly writes the story first. Would you keep logging, or would you confront? Comment your next move if you were standing in this kitchen at midnight. Sunday morning arrived with the kind of quiet that feels rehearsed. Rowan came downstairs while I was making coffee, poured himself a cup, and sat at the kitchen table scrolling his phone like we were roommates who'd agreed not to discuss last night's argument. Myra ate cereal and asked if we could go to the library. I said yes. Rowan said he had work to catch up on. She looked disappointed but didn't push. The mail came while we were getting ready. I heard the slot clang and went to collect it. Bills, catalogs, a credit card offer, and a white envelope with a logo I didn't recognize, Piedmont Financial Group. The return address was downtown. The envelope was thick, official. I opened it standing in the hallway while Myra searched for her library card upstairs. Inside was a welcome packet, full-color brochure, account terms and conditions, a letter addressed to Mr. and Mrs. Rowan Quinn thanking us for opening a brokerage account and outlining our investment journey ahead. The account number was new. The date on the letter was 6 days ago. I'd never heard of Piedmont Financial. I'd never signed anything. But there we were, both of us, listed as account holders on paperwork I'd never seen until this moment. My hands went cold. I read the letter 3 times, looking for some explanation that made sense. Joint application. Shared login credentials. Beneficiary designations pending. I took a picture of every page with my phone, folded the packet back into the envelope, and put it in the folder I kept locked in my car. When Myra and I got back from the library 2 hours later, Rowan was in the garage. I could hear him moving boxes, opening drawers, the metallic scrape of something being dragged across concrete. I texted Naledi. He opened a brokerage account in both our names. I never signed anything. Welcome letter just arrived. Her response came in under a minute. That's fraud. Forward me the photos. Do not sign anything he brings you. This escalates your timeline. I forwarded the images and stood in the kitchen staring at my phone. Escalates your timeline. That meant filing. That meant attorneys and courts and a paper trail that became permanent. I wasn't ready for that. But I also wasn't going to pretend I didn't see the pattern forming. Monday morning I called the Buckhead branch and asked for T. Whitaker. He answered on the second ring, his voice as calm and measured as it had been when Rowan tried to consolidate the account. "Mrs. Quinn, how can I help you?" "I need to extend the verification note we discussed last week. I want it applied to our safety deposit box as well. Both account holders present for access, with updated ID." There was a pause. "May I ask why?" "The same reason as before. I want to make sure any access is mutual and documented." He made a sound like he was writing something down. "I'll add the note this afternoon. It'll be active by close of business. Both parties required for box access. Valid ID. In person." "Thank you." "Mrs. Quinn," he said, and his voice softened just slightly. "You're using the tools correctly. That's all I can say." I hung up and sat in my car outside the grocery store, hands resting on the steering wheel. Rowan still had the key to that box, the small brass one with the green tag. He didn't know the rules had changed. He'd find out the next time he tried to open it alone. That afternoon, while Myra was at a playdate, I drove to a UPS store 3 towns over and opened a P.O. box under my name only. I rerouted my credit monitoring alerts, my bank statements from the new personal account, and any future legal correspondence to that address. If mail was going to start arriving that I didn't want Rowan intercepting, I needed a place only I could access. The clerk handed me 2 small keys on a ring and smiled. "Need a receipt?" "No," I said. "Thank you." I drove home and hid the keys inside a tampon box in the back of the bathroom cabinet, the same place I'd hidden the thumb drive with all my documentation. Places men don't look. Places that stay invisible until they matter. That night Rowan came home late, after Myra was asleep. He didn't say where he'd been. I didn't ask. He heated up leftovers and ate standing at the counter, scrolling his phone. I was at the dining room table with my laptop, updating the timeline document I'd been building. Every incident, every date, every piece of paper that showed intent. He glanced over. "What are you working on?" "Non-profit budget." He nodded and went back to his phone. We existed in the same space like 2 people waiting for different trains. Tuesday morning another envelope arrived. Same logo. Piedmont Financial Group. This one was thinner. I opened it in my car before I even started the engine. It was a signature card request. A form asking me to authorize electronic access and confirm my SSN and birth date for account activation purposes. A sticky note was attached in handwriting I didn't recognize. "Please sign and return at your earliest convenience." I took a picture. I did not sign it. I put the envelope in the folder and drove to Calloway's office without an appointment. Her assistant said she had 20 minutes between clients. I sat in the cold waiting room and counted the seconds. When Calloway called me back, I handed her my phone with the photos pulled up. She scrolled through them slowly, her face unreadable. "This is identity fraud," she said. "He opened an account using your information without your consent." "Can I report it?" "You can, but if you're planning to file for divorce, it might be more strategic to document it as evidence of financial misconduct and dissipation. A fraud report triggers a criminal investigation that can complicate custody and settlement negotiations. So I just let him keep doing this. No, you stop him by filing and requesting an ATIO. That freezes all major financial activity. He won't be able to open accounts, transfer assets, or access joint property without court approval. It's a legal wall, not a suggestion. She handed my phone back. "How close are you to being ready?" I thought about Myra, about the house, about the mortgage payment due in 12 days and the non-profit payroll I still had to process and the careful, exhausting work of holding everything together while the floor shifted underneath me. "Close," I said. "Then start preparing. Gather every document you have. I'll draft a petition. When you're ready to file, we'll move fast. No warning. No negotiation. Just procedure." I left her office and sat in my car for 10 minutes, staring at the dashboard. Filing meant war. But not filing meant letting him write the story while I watched. I texted Naledi, I think I'm ready to file. Her response came back immediately. Good. Let me know when. I'll walk you through what to expect. That night I couldn't sleep. I lay in bed beside Rowan, listening to him breathe, and wondered how two people who'd promised forever could end up counting each other's breaths like evidence. Doors you didn't open can still be traced back to you. Comment if you've ever had to choose between proof and peace. Wednesday afternoon I got an email from Myra's teacher, Ms. Alvarez. The subject line said quick check-in with a smiley face emoji that made my stomach drop. I opened it standing in the nonprofit's break room, coffee going cold in my hand. Hi, Ilara. I wanted to reach out because Myra drew something during free time today that gave me a little pause. She drew two houses with a dotted line between them and told another student this is where Mommy lives and this is where Daddy lives. When I asked her about it, she said the line was so they could visit each other. She seemed fine, not upset, but I wanted to let you know in case there's anything going on at home we should be aware of to best support her. Let me know if you'd like to chat. Best, Ms. Alvarez. I read it 3 times. Then I closed my laptop, grabbed my coat, and left work early. I picked Myra up from aftercare and took her for hot chocolate at the place near Medlock Park that has the marshmallows she likes. We sat by the window and I watched her blow on her cup, small hands wrapped around the ceramic, steam fogging her face. Ms. Alvarez said you drew 2 houses today. She nodded. Uh-huh. One for you and one for Daddy. Why 2 houses, baby? She shrugged and took a sip. Because sometimes people need their own space. Like when you go to your work and Daddy goes to his work. But you still love each other. I felt something crack in my chest. She was 7 years old and already building scaffolding to hold the weight we were putting on her. Myra, listen to me. Daddy and I are figuring some things out. Grown-up things. But no matter what happens, you are safe. You are loved. And you will always have a home. Do you understand? She looked at me with those wide brown eyes that missed nothing. Are you and Daddy getting a divorce? I didn't lie. I don't know yet. Maybe. But if we do, it doesn't mean we love you any less. It just means we need to live differently so everyone can be happy. Will I still see Daddy? Every week. I promise. She nodded slowly and went back to her hot chocolate. Okay. Can we still have pancakes on Saturday? Always. That night, after I put her to bed, Rowan came into the kitchen where I was loading the dishwasher. He leaned against the counter with his arms crossed, the posture of a man about to deliver a speech he'd rehearsed. I talked to someone today, he said. A mediator. I think we should try that before we do anything drastic. I closed the dishwasher and turned to face him. Why? Because it's better for Myra. Cheaper. Faster. We can work this out like adults without dragging her through a courtroom. And what do you want to work out? He hesitated, and I saw him choose his words carefully. Custody. The house. Finances. A clean split. No drama. No lawyers twisting things. I dried my hands on a towel and kept my voice level. Rowan, I've already consulted an attorney. I'm not going into mediation without representation. If you want to mediate, fine. But we both need counsel. His jaw tightened. You're making this harder than it needs to be. No, I'm making sure it's fair. Faye. His voice rose. You ambushed me at the bank. You locked me out of my own accounts. You're poisoning Myra against me. Stop. I held up a hand. I didn't lock you out of anything. I added a verification note that requires us both to be present for changes. That's not a lockout. That's a safeguard. And I have never said one negative word about you to Myra. Not one. He stayed at me, breathing hard. She drew 2 houses at school today. I know. Her teacher emailed me. Kids pick up on tension. That's not me poisoning her. That's her processing what she feels in this house. He turned away and ran his hand through his hair. When he spoke again, his voice was quieter, almost defeated. I was trying to protect us. The bank thing. The consolidation. I thought if I moved things into a more secure structure before year-end, we'd be safer. From what? Fraud. Identity theft. You travel. I didn't want someone to. Rowan. I waited until he looked at me. If that's true, why didn't you just tell me? Why bring someone else? Why try to do it while I was supposed to be out of town? He didn't answer. I folded the towel and set it on the counter. Here's what I need. Separate finances. Documented co-parenting. A schedule for Myra that doesn't change every week based on how we're feeling. And space. Real space. Not this thing where we're pretending to be roommates while we're actually cycling each other like we're waiting for someone to flinch. So you want me to leave? I want us to figure out what's fair. If that means you stay here and I move, we can talk about it. If it means we sell the house and split, we can talk about that too. But I'm not doing this. I gestured at the space between us. Anymore. Not for me. Not for Myra. He stared at me for a long time. Then he nodded once, picked up his keys, and left. I stood in the kitchen and listened to his car pull out of the driveway. The house settled into its nighttime sounds. The hum of the refrigerator. The click of the thermostat. Myra's white noise machine upstairs playing ocean waves that didn't sound like any ocean I'd ever heard. I pulled out my phone and texted Naledi, who wants mediation. I said only with counsel. He left. Her response came fast. Good boundary. He'll either respect it or escalate. Either way, you're protected. How's Myra? I typed back, drawing 2 houses. Asking questions. I told her the truth without details. Naledi, that's all you can do. Protect her routine. Let the adults figure out the mess. I set the phone down and looked at the drawing Myra had made, still pinned to the refrigerator with a magnet shaped like a strawberry. 2 houses. A dotted line. A 7-year-old's blueprint for a future she didn't choose. I wasn't going to let her carry this alone. Protect the child's routine first. Arguments can wait. Safety can't. Comment if you'd set the same boundary. Thursday morning I logged into my credit monitoring account and ran a full report. The soft inquiry I'd seen over the weekend wasn't alone anymore. There were 2 more, all from different lenders, all dated within the past 10 days. Someone was testing doors. I downloaded the report and printed it. I circled each inquiry in red and wrote the dates beside them. Then I opened the timeline document I'd been building and added a new section, Credit Activity. The pattern was clear now. It wasn't a single mistake or a moment of panic. It was a strategy. November 15th, bank alerts rerouted to Points email. November 18th, ATM withdrawals mapped to boutique hotel near Lenox. November 22nd, Ilara adds verification note at Buckhead branch. November 25th, Rowan attempts consolidation with Celine Hart. Attempt flagged. November 27th, brokerage welcome packet arrives. Account opened without Ilara's signature. November 28th, signature card request sent. November 29th to December 1st, 3 soft credit inquiries from unfamiliar lenders. It wasn't chaos. It was a chain. Each link connected to the next, and every attempt left a mark. I forwarded the credit report to Naledi with 1 line. The inquiries are escalating. She called me 10 minutes later. This is him testing liquidity options, she said. He's looking for ways to move money or secure credit without your knowledge. It's classic financial staging before a separation. What do I do? You freeze your credit. Today. All 3 bureaus. That stops any new accounts from being opened in your name. Then you file. Soon. Before he finds a door you haven't locked yet. I hung up and spent the next hour on hold with Equifax, Experian, and TransUnion. By noon, my credit was frozen. No new accounts. No inquiries. No movement without my explicit authorization. I felt lighter and heavier at the same time. Lighter because I'd closed a gap. Heavier because I knew what closing gaps meant. War was no longer theoretical. It was administrative. That afternoon I drove to Callaway's office with the updated timeline, the brokerage welcome packet, the credit report, and printed bank statements going back 8 months. I walked in without an appointment and told the receptionist I needed 20 minutes. Calloway came out, took one look at my face, and gestured me into her office. I spread the documents across her desk like a map. She read through them methodically, making notes on her legal pad, asking clarifying questions without judgment. When she finished, she set down her pen and looked at me. "You're ready to file?" "I think so." "Let me be more specific. You need to file. He's not going to stop. Every inquiry, every account, every attempt is him building a financial structure you're not part of. If you wait, you'll spend the next year unwinding things instead of protecting things." "What happens when I file?" "We petition for dissolution. We request an automatic temporary restraining order that freezes all major financial moves. No new accounts, no asset transfers, no liquidations. We outline a temporary custody schedule and child support calculation. We file it, serve him, and the clock starts." "How long does it take?" "To finalize, 6 to 12 months, depending on how cooperative he is. But the ATIO is effective immediately upon filing. That's your wall." I stared at the documents spread across her desk. My life, reduced to bullet points and dollar signs and dates that proved intent. "What do I need to do?" She slid a checklist across the desk. "Gather these items: full financial disclosure, tax returns, pay stubs, account statements, title documents for cars and property, list of marital assets and debts. Once I have everything, I draft the petition. You review it. We file." "How soon?" "If you get me everything by Monday, we can file by Wednesday." 5 days. 5 days between now and the moment this became real. Permanent. A matter of public record. I took the checklist and stood. "I'll have it to you by Monday morning." She walked me to the door. "Ilara, you're doing the right thing. Not the easy thing, but the right thing." I nodded and left before my voice could crack. That night I stayed up until 2 in the morning organizing documents. Tax returns from the past 3 years, bank statements, car titles, the mortgage deed, pay stubs, a list of every joint account, every credit card, every asset we'd acquired together. I built a spreadsheet that categorized everything: marital property, separate property, joint debt, individual debt. I calculated equity. I estimated values. I turned 8 years of marriage into a balance sheet. Rowan came home after midnight and went straight to the guest room without speaking to me. I heard the door close, the lock click. We were already living separate lives. Filing would just make it official. Friday morning I woke up exhausted but clear. I sent Calloway an email with the first batch of documents attached. Subject line: Financial Disclosure, Part 1. Naledi texted me, "How are you holding up?" I typed back, "I'm okay. Filing next week." Her response came immediately, "Proud of you. Stay boring. Stay factual. Let the paper do the work." I made coffee and stood at the kitchen window watching the sun come up over the cul-de-sac. Porch lights flickering off. Garage doors rolling open. The neighborhood waking up to another day that looked normal from the outside. I wasn't trying to win. I was just trying to make sure that when this was over, Myra would still feel safe, the bills would still get paid, and the story wouldn't be written by the person who got to the pen first. Single incidents lie. Chains don't. Comment if you've ever had to turn your life into evidence. 3 days after I handed Calloway the last of the documents, I sat at the kitchen table organizing bills while Myra built a pillow fort in the living room. She draped a purple blanket over 2 dining chairs and declared it the castle where queens live. I could hear her narrating a story to her stuffed animals, something about brave knights and dragons who turn nice after you gave them cookies. The stack of papers in front of me told a different story. Mortgage statement, utility bills, Myra's school expenses, car insurance, all of it now routed through my personal account, paid on time, documented in a spreadsheet that color-coded every transaction by category. My phone sat face up beside the folder, waiting. Calloway had said the petition would be filed Wednesday morning. Today was Friday. 3 days since the documents went to the courthouse. 3 days since the process server delivered a manila envelope to Rowan at his office. 3 days since he'd been home. He'd texted once, "We need to talk before this goes any further." I hadn't replied. There was nothing left to say that wasn't already written in 23 pages of legal pleading and a 12-page financial affidavit. 3 days later, they didn't find an empty vault. They found me. The voicemail notification came at 4:47 p.m. I didn't recognize the number, but the area code was local. I played it on speaker while Myra sang to her stuffed bear in the next room. "Hi, this message is for Ilara Quinn. This is Marcus Chen from Piedmont Financial Group. I'm calling about a pending beneficiary update on account ending in 7624. We received a request earlier this week, but we're unable to process without a notarized signature from both account holders. Please call me back at your earliest convenience to discuss next steps." Again, that's Marcus Chen, Piedmont Financial, 404-555-0 Marion. Thank you. I played it again, then a third time. A pending beneficiary update on an account I'd never opened. An account that arrived in a welcome packet I'd never requested. An account that was now part of Exhibit D in a dissolution petition filed 3 days ago with an automatic temporary restraining order attached. I forwarded the voicemail to Naledi and Calloway with one line, "He's still trying." Naledi called 60 seconds later. "He doesn't know the ATIO is active yet," she said. "Or he's testing it. Either way, do not call that number back. Let your attorney handle it." What if he's trying to change beneficiaries before the court freezes everything? He can try, but the ATIO was effective the moment you filed. Any financial institution that processes a change without verifying the restraining order is liable. Most won't risk it. Let Calloway send them a courtesy letter. That'll shut it down. I hung up and stared at the voicemail screen. He was still looking for doors, still pressing on locks, still convinced he could move faster than procedure if he just found the right angle. But procedure doesn't sleep, and policies don't negotiate. That night I made spaghetti. Myra set the table with the mismatched plates she liked, one with daisies, one with cartoon penguins. We ate by the window where the last of the daylight turned the trees gold. "Mommy, when is Daddy coming home?" I set down my fork and looked at her. "I don't know, baby. He's staying somewhere else for a little while." "Because you're getting a divorce." "Because we need space to figure things out." She twirled spaghetti on her fork, thinking. "Ms. Alvarez said divorce means 2 houses, but you said I'd still see Daddy every week." "That's right. You will. I promise." "Will you still be friends?" I took a breath. "We'll always be your parents. That doesn't change. But grown-up relationships are complicated. Sometimes people love each other but can't live together anymore." She nodded slowly, like she was filing that information away for later. "Can we have pancakes tomorrow?" "Absolutely. And a movie night. Your choice." Her face lit up. "Frozen." Again. "It's a good movie, Mommy." I smiled. "You're right. Frozen it is." After dinner, I tucked her into bed and read 3 chapters of the book we'd been working through, something about a girl who discovered a magical library. Myra fell asleep before the 3rd chapter ended, her hand curled around the edge of her blanket, breathing soft and steady. I stood in her doorway for a long time, watching her. This small person who'd overheard things she shouldn't have to process, who drew 2 houses because her brain was trying to make sense of fractures she didn't create, who still asked for pancakes and movie nights because routine was the only thing that felt solid. I wasn't fighting for money. I wasn't fighting to win. I was fighting to make sure that when the dust settled, she'd still wake up in a house that felt like home, with a mother who kept promises and a father who stayed present even if he wasn't staying here. Downstairs, I opened my laptop and checked my email. Calloway had sent a message timestamped 6:12 p.m. Subject: ATIO compliance letter sent. Ilara. I've sent a formal notice to Piedmont Financial Group informing them of the active ATIO and advising that any account changes require court approval or mutual written consent from both parties. I've copied the court file number and included a PDF of the restraining order. They will not process the beneficiary update. Rowan's attorney reached out today requesting a settlement conference. I told them we're open to discussion but not negotiation until he provides full financial disclosure, including documentation for the Piedmont account and any other accounts opened in the past 6 months. You're doing everything right. Stay the course. See. I closed the laptop and sat in the quiet. The dishwasher hummed through its cycle. The house settled with small creaks that sounded like exhales. Outside, a neighbor's porch light flickered on, then off, then on again. Justice wasn't loud. It wasn't cinematic. It was a series of small, deliberate actions taken in the right order. A verification note, a frozen credit report, a petition filed on time, a beneficiary update that stopped mid-process because someone checked the file. It was boring, and boring was winning. Saturday morning I made pancakes. Myra ate 4 and asked for whipped cream even though we didn't have any. I gave her extra syrup instead and she declared it the best breakfast ever. We spent the afternoon at the library. She checked out 6 books. I checked out 2, one on co-parenting after divorce, one on teaching kids emotional resilience. The librarian smiled at me like she knew. Maybe she did. Maybe everyone who works with families recognizes the look of someone holding it together with duct tape and spreadsheets. That evening we watched Frozen for what had to be the 30th time. Myra sang along to every song, her voice high and confident. I wrapped her in a blanket and pulled her close. Mommy. Yeah, baby. Are you sad? I thought about that. About the past 3 weeks. About bank lobbies and attorney consultations and voicemails from financial institutions I'd never heard of. Sometimes, I said. But I'm also okay. Because I have you. And we're safe. And we're going to be fine. She looked up at me. Promise. Promise. She went back to watching the movie. I rested my chin on her head and let the music wash over us. 3 days after I filed, Rowan didn't find an empty vault. He found me, at the kitchen table with bills paid, at the bank with policies enforced, in the courthouse with a petition that said enough in legal language he couldn't charm his way past. He found me with a daughter who still believed in pancakes and movie-nights and mothers who keep promises. And he found me with a paper trail that didn't shout or accuse or beg. It just existed. Time-stamped. Documented. Undeniable. Monday morning I got a text from Rowan. Can we talk? I don't want to do this through lawyers. I stared at it for 30 seconds, then forwarded it to Calloway without comment. Her response came back immediately. Don't respond. Let me handle it. I set the phone down and made coffee. Outside, the neighborhood was waking up. Garage doors opening. Cars backing out of driveways. Another day that looked normal from the outside. I wasn't normal. But I was standing. And standing was enough. Justice can be quiet. Safety can be planned. Peace is built, not begged. I didn't shout. I didn't threaten. I didn't collapse. I just showed up early where timing mattered, used the tools that institutions gave me, and trusted that policies don't lie even when people do. I documented. I froze. I filed. I protected my daughter's routine and paid the bills and kept the house standing while the lawyers sorted out who owned what percentage of the rubble. It wasn't romantic. It wasn't satisfying in the way movies make you think justice should be. But it was real. And it was mine. 3 days later, they didn't find an empty vault. They found me. If this story taught you something, if it made you think about the small protections you might need, the policies you should know, the documents you should keep, then it did what it was supposed to do. Subscribe so you don't miss what happens when quiet preparation meets loud consequences. Comment below. Would you have filed, or would you have kept negotiating? Your answer matters. And remember, the person who shows up early writes the story first. Make sure it's you.